This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. If, like me, you have multiple phones and you want to save some money on multiple SIMs. Hi and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Thursday, February 23rd, 2023, and I have the awesome Anshel Sag here with me. Hi, Anshel. How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me on again.
You know what I just realized? It's a mad week and a mad day. I am heading on an airplane in about 5 hours to go to Barcelona for MWC. So, I just realized we should probably talk about what we think we're going to see there.
I agree.
Because I have a calendar full of events. I have some devices already I can't speak about. And I know some stuff is coming that we kind of know is coming. So what's your take so far on the landscape of MWC, especially since you're an analyst, so you probably have an interestingly different perspective than me there.
I think it's definitely a more interesting MWC than last year.
Yeah, well.
I still think the show isn't really back to where it was pre-pandemic. But I think the equation of whether or not I should go was a lot easier this year than last year.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of companies that still want to get in front of people. And I think there's a lot of products that people want to get out there. And I also think if you look at, some of the products that we haven't actually had a chance to see in person that may have launched in Asia, but haven't launched in Europe yet or North America, this is a great opportunity to get people in front of those products and try them out and maybe even see some upcoming prototypes as well.
Indeed, I think you've kind of covered it all in one sentence. But I think to get more down to the details, what strikes me is that, we've had, of course, the big Samsung thing, which they've done separately for years now. This is nothing new. But it's interesting to see how Oppo launched the Fine N2 Flip last week. I have one. They launched it last week and flew some people to London last week, only to basically fly them back out to MWC this week. There's a lot of the media that I know is being sponsored by Oppo. Not me this year. Last year, they flew me out there. But the point is that, we're seeing still a bit of what we saw in years before COVID, where some companies, I should say, are launching products kind of just before, or there it is, the little Oppo Fine N2 Flip. We're seeing folks just like companies just launching things before, after. There's rumors of some people going to another trip right after, also with Oppo, possibly for the Find X6 Pro. I could presume that might be what it is. That phone's going to come out at some point. That's really their proper flagship. I know they're focusing a lot on the folding phones right now, which is smart because they want to get a piece of that Samsung pie. But yeah, it's interesting. And you know what else is interesting? It's interesting to see how many phones have already launched. We probably will see launch globally. Like Xiaomi 13, I don't have any intel per se that's going to launch at MWC, folks. I don't want to speak for sure here, but it's pretty clear that phone's been out since December in China, and we haven't seen a global release yet. So, would you wait till after MWC at this point to launch it?
I don't know. I don't know if you follow Lei Jun on Twitter, but he's been posting a lot of teasers.
Yeah. Here's some of the things that I think we can expect, right? Reasonably, we can expect something from Realme, right? Because they've always had a flagship around this time. And, it's always been super competitive. And they just launched the Realme GT Neo 5 in China, which is the first 240 watt phone. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some other phone with that technology and possibly their flagship even, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we have like Honor. It's clear to me, Honor, the folding phone, the VS, has already been announced, and I believe they're going to launch that internationally. Then there is, potentially a Magic successor, right? There's got to be a Magic 5 Lite just launched in Europe, which is a rebrand. I talked about this on last week's show. It's a rebrand of an Honor 9A or something. So it's basically like they're seems like they're lining up all their ducks to launch some sort of flagship there too. These are the ones at the top of my head. I think we're gonna like those three. I think are pretty much gonna be there. ZTE, who knows what they do? It sounds to me like they might be doing something.
I have some intel on that.
Whoa.
So they are going to be announcing a tablet with a 3D display, but it's a glasses-free, really high immersion 3D display. They work with Leia, which
I was going to say, is that the same technology as the Red phone?
Much more mature version of that technology. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I'm surprised Leia is still around. I did talk to the CEO once about their upcoming tech, and he kind of hinted that a tablet would be, but this is like years ago. This is pre-COVID. I thought by now that they were gone and disappeared, you know?
They had already done that tablet. This is second generation.
Aha. Okay, interesting.
So that's what ZTE is announcing.
Did they do the first one with ZTE or someone else?
No,
do you remember?
They did it themselves.
Oh, I think I remember that actually, now that you mention it.
Yeah, they tried to seed it to a few press.
Interesting.
I think interest was a little murky.
Lukewarm.
Yeah.
I think I saw that tablet when I met him actually, and I was like, dude, that's not even competitive. It looks ugly and that display looks like crap. I'm sorry to say, but hopefully this is better. Yeah, let's see. Who else? Oh, so OnePlus is showing a concept phone. We know this because they told us already. So we're going to talk about some of the leaks around that. That's, I think, what I want to jump into next. But, I mean, do you have anything else right now do you think is kind of more or less, you by deduction, confirmed for MWC in terms of devices?
Not really. There is some AR stuff that's kind of leaking over from CES, but I don't really think there's going to be anything particularly earth-shattering on the smartphone side from what I've seen.
You know, the other thing that, well, I mean, it doesn't just have to be smartphone, but yeah, I hear you. I think, again, my fear with MWC is that, you know, if Oppo and, you know, Realme and Honor start pulling out and doing their own events separately, and Oppo is starting to do that, clearly, with the Fine N2 Flip, like, what's going to happen to MWC in terms of device launches? Now, I know it's a very big industry event. It's kind of like CTIA, right? Like, a lot of the wheeling and dealing of all the important stuff happening in the industry, especially at the operator and the you know, networking level happens there. I'm not saying it's going to go away, but I kind of don't want it to become a CTIA, you know, where remember all the cool products they would announce at CTIA back in the day? Like I would go to Orlando, Florida or San Diego or something. And like it back then it was heavily driven by the carrier. And of course, CTIA was very heavily US centric show, but it was like you could go there and know as a journalist you were going to get hands-on with a whole bunch of really cool crap, right? I don't want that to go away.
I think that will be the inevitable end if partners stop launching devices there.
Yeah.
When you look at what MWC is today without smartphone launches, it's effectively infrastructure and carriers and carrier services. So it will become a much bigger CTIA. And I mean, the best thing it could be is just maybe they just put devices on a show floor and have an expo with the devices that they've launched, whether it's before or after. But I just feel like people getting hands-on is a big component of MWC, in my opinion, and seeing things in person. But if the OEMs refuse to do launches at the show, I'm not sure they're going to really want to invest in having show space and floor space for it.
Yeah. Did you hear anything from Sony? That's the one thing that I'm like, Nokia, they have something going on, but I don't think we're going to see anything exciting from them. But there's been so many rumors of the new flagship from Sony. Do you have any intel on whether that might be happening here?
No, I also saw those rumors, and I haven't really seen or heard anything that would validate those rumors being true.
Interesting, right? Because Sony used to really drive product at MWC back in the day. And I want to say that there is something that's kind of exciting on my calendar here, and that might lead to a hands-on or a device, folks. And that is with Techno. Techno, similarly to Infinix, is a brand that is Chinese-based, but makes phones for developing markets, mostly Africa, parts of the Middle East and Eastern Europe, and Far East countries like Malaysia and Philippines and stuff. And honestly, I've had several of both of the company's phones, and they're always pretty awesome bang for the buck. And I got that Techno phone with the telephoto that pops out,
Mm-hmm.
and that was pretty good. I mean, a 2.5x telephoto is a nice thing to have and they were able to do that because they were able to artificially make the Z depth bigger, right? By having the camera pop out like that. This is a cool phone. So Techno is supposed to have potentially a folding phone that they're going to be showing. And it's kind of crazy to me that this brand that's really been focused on, budget, I wouldn't say budget, but definitely developing, markets is potentially coming out with a folding phone. Because the Techno with the camera that pops out, that thing is like really expensive, right? I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. It's called the Phantom X2 Pro. It's like really not cheap. And it's a bit of a one-off. It's kind of a bit like a show-off phone, right? But for that kind of market that they're addressing, you'd think they'd be more like Realme, trying to make a flagship that's kind of really clear undercutting the competition, right? But no, they're supposedly going to a folding phone, at least to show it off at MWC. So,
Yeah, I think we talked about that before.
It was you and me, right? I think it was on the
Yeah.
last podcast you were on. Because I thought it was going to be affordable because I was like, it's got to be Techno. And then you're like, no, did you see the price? And I was like, oh, crap. I remember that. Oh, man, Techno. Every time I hear that word, all I can think of is party time. Okay. Yeah, so let's see what else. MediaTek and Qualcomm are going to be there. So who knows what they're going to be showing off. I'm kind of excited. I'm hearing rumors of Qualcomm doing a 7 Plus Gen 1 type chip. But I've been briefed, so I can tell you that I don't think that's happening. But I heard rumors, so you never know. Any thoughts on that?
I have been briefed on both companies fully.
Me too, yeah.
And I mean, basically, most of what's going to be out there is out there now.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean, there's one more announcement coming tomorrow. So unfortunately, we won't be able to talk about it here.
No.
But in general, I think I don't think we're really going to see anything earth shattering or particularly surprising from either company. Where I will say, MediaTek is going to have an increased presence at MWC this year,
which is exciting.
They're actually going to have a much bigger booth with more demos, which I'm excited about.
Me too. Wi-Fi 7.
And Qualcomm's obviously going to have their gigantic booth like they always do. But I believe they're going to be in the same hall this year, which is going to be very interesting and easy for us to be able to walk between.
I have to give Qualcomm props because every year this happens. And every year they do this for me. And this is what's cool. I ping them last minute and say, hey, I need a room to record the podcast. And they stuff me in a conference room in their booth. And we record the show. And it's generally a covered room, unlike a lot of the, show floor booths that are not covered and terrible for sound and recording. And so I got to give Qualcomm a big thank you in advance for me probably doing this again. So if if Haley or Catherine or the folks out there are listening.
I think I recorded it with you last year.
I think you did it last year. Yeah. And if you want to join again this year, I can't guarantee you this, folks, but I've got a few folks lined up that you know. Of course, Nick Gray, as usual, who's my partner in crime for any on-the-go mobile podcast needs. And then potentially Narav, Gondia, and maybe Christian DeLooper. So, yeah, if you want to join us, we can see how our predictions panned out. It'll probably be on Tuesday next week. I don't know exactly when yet, but we're having a bit of a chill podcast today, folks, because there's not a lot of news, and I just woke up early for this, and I have a crazy week and crazy day. So we're just going to take it easy and talk about some of the news. I have mentioned the OnePlus 11 concept, and we saw a teaser, right, for that. So I mean, it's not what I was expecting. Honestly, I was kind of expecting they would show a folding phone more like in that direction because we've seen going through TINA, the Chinese certification, the naming for two OnePlus phones, the OnePlus, I don't know, Fold or something, and the OnePlus Flip something. I think it was OnePlus V Fold, OnePlus V Flip. That was a few weeks ago. And so we know for sure they're making essentially Oppo Find N2, versions for OnePlus. But are those coming to North America? I really, really, really hope so because we really, really need that competition and we really need OnePlus to kind of come out there swinging. Look, the 11 5G is a great phone. My review's out. I told you last week about it. I think other than wireless charging, which bothers me that it's missing, I think it's a solid phone. And I feel like they've kind of found the mojo back in many ways. But at the same time, we need something that really pushes the envelope because this market, look at it. They still don't have, nobody still has made a Galaxy S23 Ultra competitor. Maybe Xiaomi, with the 13 Pro or whatever the Ultra version of that's going to be. But like we still don't have anyone regularly making something. And I'm not saying that's where OnePlus should go because they should try to undercut the competition. But I'm thinking the folding market is ripe, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think the folding market is very ripe, and there's a lot of interest that has been mostly stoked by Samsung.
Yeah.
I think, when I look at the market today, it really seems like a lot of consumers are excited about the flip phones, whether it's from Samsung or not. Fold, it's much more of a business user. I love my Fold, but it's not for everybody. And
Correct.
I definitely feel like the majority of consumers are more interested in a flip than a fold. But having competition is always good, and I think add Motorola to the equation, and then you add Oppo, OnePlus group into it. It could be very interesting, and if there's some kind of competitiveness on price, I would love to see that. And to your point, I also have my OnePlus 11 review up, and I also agree with you on the wireless charging. I will say, though, they still haven't resolved the Wi-Fi performance issues that I noticed.
Oh,
And I'm
interesting.
hoping, and they had an update that came out that I thought might fix it. But I'm literally getting half the speeds on Wi-Fi on that device compared to my other Wi-Fi 6 devices.
Wild.
And it's interesting because most people might not notice it because they don't have a gigabit fiber connection with a good enough router to push a gig over the Wi-Fi, but I do, and that's one of the reasons why I do, because I can test Wi-Fi performance, and I'm only getting like 300 to 400 megabits on the OnePlus 11, while I'm getting like almost like 900 to a 8 to 900 on the Samsung.
Now that you mention it, I noticed that too, but it wasn't as obvious for me because my connection doesn't cap off quite as fast as yours. I think I'm at like, it says say 1 giga, but I'm getting like 750 down and up. And I was seeing like 600-ish on the Samsung, 400-ish on the OnePlus, but I didn't like, interference, whatever. I didn't think much of it. But it's interesting because it's supposed to have Wi-Fi 7. This is one of the first phones with Wi-Fi 7. And, what the hell? Interesting. I don't know.
So I'll tell you something else. My understanding is that there are, even though there are devices with Wi-Fi 7 capable chipsets in them, I do not believe that any of them are currently operating in Wi-Fi 7 mode yet.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm sure. I mean, like right now, this is future proofing. I'm buying this phone because I'm on a tight budget. I've saved all my money. I'm going to buy a phone every 2 years, a flagship, right? And this is like definitely one of the best bang for your bucks right now if you're in North America based and you really want all the bands and the support and everything. So yeah, you've saved your money, you want it, and you know that you're going to be buying Wi-Fi 7 router in the next year or two. That makes perfect sense. And maybe you have a gigabit connection. But I feel like it's not a must-have. Like personally, for me who keeps phones a year or so, I think I'd be very happy with Wi-Fi 6E on a phone right now. But yeah. So yeah, this OnePlus concept looks like a OnePlus 11 on steroids with like some blinking lights a la, Nothing Phone 1 in the back. I'm not sure what to make. I'm not super excited about this. I'm sorry.
I definitely got Nothing Phone vibes out of that. I don't really know what the point of it is. But then again, what's the point? The notifications on the Nothing phone, right? That's basically it.
Yeah. It's a gimmick on the Nothing Phone 1. No offense to Nothing, because I love that phone. I think the phone is extremely well balanced and great value, ticks all the right boxes, and delivers a very good experience at all levels. And you don't need a flagship chip to do that. If you're a gamer, you do, but like I don't think that most people care. To see Nothing come out with a phone that only had two cameras, none of this 2 megapixel BS, was so refreshing. And I feel like I don't want to be too mean to them, but yeah, the glyph light stuff I could have done without. But it's also what distinguished them and got them the attention. So we can't probably be too mean about it. But this for OnePlus, remember that concept phone with the ND filter in CS whenever it was? Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
okay.
I think
Vaguely
it was
remember that.
CS. I want to say CS 2020, just before the collapse of the universe. Anyway, it was orange, and it was essentially a rebranded, I think, OnePlus 7 or 8 Pro at the time. It had a leather back that was orange, and it had the camera module had this ND filter that you could turn on and off using, like the same technology as you see on glass roofs in cars now that can turn on and off, or what is on a Dreamliner, but that was 10 years ago and that's much older technology. And so you could turn on the ND filter and basically shoot in the daylight with a really fast lens that would kind of be a little bit less intensely exposed because of that ND filter. And that's kind of what this is going to be. It's just they're going to take a OnePlus 11 and just sauce it up somehow. I'm not sure I'm super excited about that. No offense, but
I could see it potentially being a way to distribute light for flash in a way that's maybe
oh,
more even and because every phone flash, the flash is really close to the sensors, right? So if you were able to distribute the light from the flash a little more evenly, you could create a very nice studio lighting setup when you take photos of people. That's literally the only thing I can think of at this point.
yeah. Look, I'm gonna be there. I'm looking forward to it. I don't want to be mean because it's I just concepts are cool. It's just that I'm trying. I was hoping we'd see something more like reflective of what's coming rather than, hey, look, we did a cool adaptation on a current phone.
Yep.
Like they did last time at that CS thing. But let's see what happens. So what else? Oh, okay. So this is not really related to MWC, but we've seen leaks of a Moto Razr where the entire front glass, if you hold it shut, is a display with the cameras literally cutting through it and the flash cutting through it. Kind of think, yeah, it's awesome. Think think the hole punch on the modern phones, but imagine that at a scale where it can accommodate two front cameras and a LED flash. Not front cameras, two rear cameras, but they're on the back of the phone, which folds in half. So, you get what I'm saying. If you're confused, check out the link in the show notes. I got a link to 9 to 5 Google about it. And there's some leaked covered photos there, renders or something. I think that's super cool because, the Oppo Find N2 Flip that I have, having a larger cover display, even though it doesn't do more than the display on the Samsung Z Flip, is just nice. It's just more real estate. Things are easier to read. It's more fun. And having a vertical display like that makes it much easier to take selfies with the good cameras. And so I want to see Moto do that, especially since this is rumors to go back to a slimmer, narrower form factor than the second gen Razr that came out in China first, is now available globally, and is a bit of a tank for a flip phone. If you watch Michael Fisher's video, you'll see what I mean, right?
Yeah, I think that previous model was definitely designed to maximize screen space, to differentiate from, say, Samsung in that
Right.
sense. But I hope that this new generation maybe moves slightly back to a little more of that proper Razer stylizing, because I felt like they abandoned that um, design concept with the second generation when they really lean into it on the first. But yeah, I think the whole punch style camera configuration is really interesting because you can start putting things around the camera lenses, and
Right.
and like you can have exposure and things like that around the lenses themselves.
Oh yeah, you could tweak it, or you could. I'm actually surprised they have an LED flash in there. You could use the display as the flash, but centering it around the lenses more. And to be clear, folks, the lenses are raised out of that display. Like, so there actually is some Z depth there. It's not like they're flush like a normal punch hole front camera would be, a selfie cam on a regular bar phone. But it's just interesting. And I'm like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, it's one of those moments like, of course you do that. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, how did we not think of that before? But I mean, it's probably, there's some pricing issues there. Custom displays are not cheap. But it's Lenovo, so
Well, here's the thing. Every time you cut out a piece of the display, you are driving up your cost.
For sure, yeah.
It happens. And yields are also go worse, too. So I think this might be just one of those things where they figured out to make it less costly to do. But I think there's lots of room for interesting user interface experiences around the camera, kind of like you're seeing Apple try to do with the
oval pill, whatever you want to call it.
The dynamic island.
Thank you. There's a proper word for it. Of course, Apple has a proper word for everything.
And I will say, as somebody who's been using the iPhone 14 Pro Max since it launched, it's kind of growing on me.
I think it's awesome.
It's becoming more useful. Like when I'm driving, I can see my navigation because I don't have a new enough car anymore to do Apple CarPlay. But it's really interesting, and I think you could do something similar with photography, videography around the cameras, and just making more use of the screen space.
Absolutely. I think this is cool. I'm looking forward to it. I feel like this might be Moto going back in the proper direction for their flip phone, folding phone, because look, they are one of the pioneers. They didn't get it right, but they got it first, and we can't fault them for that. Like it's hard to compete with Samsung. Let's put it this way. But I believe they could. And in the same way as Oppo is, it's a good first effort there. And I think I want to see more. And it means that we could get this phone, right? It means this might be the phone that Verizon says, oh yeah, we want. Because Verizon and Moto, they're in bed. They love each other. So if we see this here, I heard that Verizon didn't really like the bigger, wider phone. And so this might be the solution to us getting another folding phone that's a flip format here in this market. Of course, if you're in other countries, you'll get it probably first. At this rate, I have a feeling that this whole coming out to China first thing is definitely becoming real. It used to be, even with OnePlus, like it used to be that you used to get the phone's global launch right away, but now the last 2 years they've launched their flagship in China first, so you gotta get used to that, for better or for worse, right?
Yep.
Okay, speaking of folding phones, the Pixel Fold has been rumored for a long time now. Dave 2D a few months ago did a video where he got a dummy, and you could see the dimension comparison with the Oppo Find N2 and versus the Galaxy Z Fold 4, of course. And, it looks more, like an Oppo Find N2 type of, book folding phone. But this rumor I thought was interesting, or leak rather, is that, no, it's more of a rumor. It's that it might be a little heavy, but it will have a bigger battery than the competition, which I'm kind of seeing this in two ways. One way is that, oh yeah, that'd be great. More battery life is good. But then I'm like, oh, Tensor, right? So I'm like, this is going to have a Tensor chip in it. So it probably does need a bigger battery because the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is so freaking efficient, like unreal.
My first reaction when I saw this leak was, of course it has a bigger battery. It needs it because it's running a Tensor. And more importantly, it's running a Shannon Samsung modem, which has been the bane of the Pixel's existence.
It's
since
so bad.
They switched to it. And I think I actually tweeted this out a couple days ago. I think the Pixel 7 Pro would have been perfect if it had a Snapdragon.
Oh, I've been saying this all along. Like, this is the perfect phone with a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Like, unbelievably good. And it's sad to say that, but it's so real. Like every time I use my Pixel in kind of, spurious, difficult signal areas, it just like turns into a warm brick in my hand. And it's like, dude, like I can see the current flowing from the battery into the radio right now. Like, don't do that. Like, I don't experience that with my S23 Ultra or my OnePlus 11. Like, what the F? You put them side by side with T-Mobile, right? You put them, or Mint, our sponsor, because they're running on T-Mo. Like, I have a Mint SIM right now on my S23 Ultra, and it's awesome. And I put them side by side, and literally I've got an extra bar on any Qualcomm modem, or even MediaTek, for that matter. The Fine N2 Flip is a MediaTek Dimensity 9000 Plus. I'm running it on T-Mo right now. I get one more bar than my Pixel on a phone that's not even certified for our market. Like, come on. Like,
Google has some issues with trust, I think, when it comes to semiconductor supply. And Google's in a weird place right now as a company. So I don't even know how long this will last, because it's a very expensive, production
hobby.
Mm-hmm. And if Samsung is no longer, spending the money to produce high-end Exynos chips, I'm not even sure Google will have a partner to do that with anymore, because they did a lot of borrowing in the first generation. And if they're not doing a lot of borrowing in the second generation, that means they're doing a lot of their own custom engineering.
So here's a thought. Here's a thought. Why? This is my ideal Pixel 8 Pro, okay? Because, the folding phone is cool. I want one. I'll have one. Absolutely. But I think my daily drive for the next couple of years is still going to be, for me at least, a brick phone, like a slab. And I think, so if I were to imagine a situation where, Samsung and Google have a talk, and Samsung goes, we're not going to make Exynos for much longer, or we're going to move on to a completely different chip architecture or something, and it's not going to be quite ready for a while. You need to find another solution. I would love to see Google to go to Snapdragon 8 Gen whatever, right? But with a custom MPU, kind of like the Mary Silicon X from Oppo. Like, I know it's not the most efficient because it's not tightly integrated, but considering how kind of bad Tensor is, I'd rather, when I fire up the camera, use a little more juice and have an incredible experience, and then not have that, and then still have better radio, better efficiency when I'm playing games or whatever. That's just me, just an idea.
I think the interesting part is, there's a possibility they could use MediaTek, but I feel like that NPU and security, those things can be integrated. Those things can also exist on their own chips like they have in the past. So
correct.
I don't know. I just think Google struggles with hardware, and they got really close with the Pixel 7 Pro, and I just feel like they missed the mark on the SoC.
100%. And I think that I'm not, saying no to that Dimensity 9200 or something. It's just, I haven't benchmarked that chip yet. I don't know. Like, I know that the 9000 Plus are pretty solid, very competitive, but those are last year's chips. And what I want to see is, I get one of those Vivo X90s. I've requested one, so let's find out. X90 Pro specifically, since the Pro Plus is Snapdragon. So yeah, I'll find out, folks. But right now, I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's great. I just feel like Qualcomm has delivered such an efficiency blow this year, particularly. Like the 8 Gen 1, folks, I wasn't very impressed, to be honest. Like the 8 Plus Gen 1 saved the day. But like those of you on a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, like if you have an Oppo Find X5 Pro, or if you have a OnePlus 10 Pro, or if you have any S22 phone from last year, like you're probably noticing, like if you have any other phones nearby that are the newer Snapdragon generations, that it's like night and day. And, like particularly with the S22 Ultra, like versus S23 Ultra, I've used them extensively, and holy crap, the difference, right?
Yeah, I'm sad because I'm still waiting for my S23 Ultra.
Dude, you will literally get 25% more battery life. Literally, just off the top. Like, just like that. Same phone, essentially, just better performance, better battery life, and the camera is slightly better. So yeah, amazing. But speaking of Galaxy S23s, there is rumors again of an Galaxy S23 Fan Edition FE. We skipped last year's S22 FE. The S21 FE wasn't as price competitive as it could be. And the S20 FE, which started all the whole FE thing, was awesome. We loved the 20 FE. 21 FE we were kind of mad because the wasn't as competitive, and 22 FE didn't exist. So I'm actually excited to see a 23 FE if those rumors pan out.
I will add the 21 FE was actually a great phone at the very end of its life cycle because they cut the price very aggressively. And I had a friend who was looking for an affordable phone, and I think they had just let out the A53 5G, and it was brand new, and the S21 FE was like kind of like falling off.
Yeah.
And the prices were essentially the same. And I was like, dude, it's a no-brainer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Versus an A class, yeah, you get wireless charging, you're getting Snapdragon 8 series, you're getting, better cameras. I mean, yeah. This is what we loved. I remember when I reviewed the S20 FE, I said that Samsung had out OnePlus OnePlus. Remember what I said. That's exactly what I felt like. I felt like I had a OnePlus phone in my hand in terms of value,
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, OnePlus was kind of fumbling. They were going up in price, and delivering great phones. Don't get me wrong, just not quite as aggressively priced. And I felt like Samsung's like, look, OnePlus, this is how you make a value phone in the flagship realm. Yeah. So I want to see that, honestly. If they can pull that off. And you're going to see, some people are going to say, well, what about the S22 going on sale now, really cheap? And I'm like, it's 8 Gen 1, guys. Like, I'd rather have an 8 Plus Gen 1, which is what this phone's rumored to have, which makes sense, by the way. I don't think them putting an 8 Gen 2 is going to happen in that thing. But 8 Plus Gen 1, oh, yeah. I mean, they're so close, those two chips anyway, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know. It's cool. So we talked about custom SoCs for Google, and this rumor has been swirling around for a while. I'm just bringing it up because I'm like, this is starting to get really more solid. So how do you feel about Oppo making their own SoC? Do you think this is happening? And do you think they can do this completely on their own, or is this going to be like a partnership with like maybe MediaTek or something?
I think if they do it, it will not be on their own.
Okay.
Wafer supply agreements alone suck. And if you don't have scale, it's very expensive to fabricate your own chips.
Yeah.
Let alone design them. And I think that they are going to want to have a partner. And I think MediaTek might be a good fit if they do choose to go that route.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think that from a marketing perspective, that they should approach this as purely a, this is an Oppo chip and MediaTek is just completely just like, we know it's them, but there's no marketing around it? Or do you think it's an opportunity for MediaTek to come out guns blazing?
I think most likely this will be one of those partnerships where MediaTek takes a back seat because Oppo wants to own that.
Yeah, and the Mera Silicon brand.
And MediaTek is pretty good at helping their partners be successful without necessarily trying to take full credit for it.
So you're seeing a tensor type arrangement where we all know it's Samsung, but very rarely is Samsung mentioned, at least on a marketing kind of consumer facing side, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited about this. I, feel that they've done some cool stuff with Mera Silicon X. They're bringing some low light video performance that still no other company is able to match, even Apple. And that, that's kind of their one thing, right? But I think that it does also help in other situations. Like I have the Find N2 Flip is Mera Silicon X. I have, of course, the Find X5 Pro last year, which was Qualcomm based for the SoC. And then, of course, I've used the Reno 8 Pro, which was MediaTek and Mera Silicon X. And, all of them are pretty great at low light video, and all of them are pretty solid overall in imaging. I don't think that the Reno and the Find N2 Flip are in the same league, of course, as the Find X5 Pro, right?
Yeah.
But there is definitely something to be said about them having their custom ISP. And we've seen the same thing with Vivo, who has also got some other custom ISP, which I wouldn't be surprised is kind of like because BBK Group is a kind of rebranded Mary Silicon X or something. But I have no definite proof of that because Vivo is very opaque to us in the West. Like I love their product. I get it. They send it to me, and it's always one of the best camera phones every year, the X series. But I'm just like, yeah, we don't know much about how they do their stuff. They're kind of like the terrible child in the BBK Group in the way that they kind of like run their own thing and nobody really knows how they fit into the greater equation of BBK. Whereas, it's very clear that Oppo, OnePlus, and Realme are, and obviously now OnePlus is actually incorporated into Oppo, but even when they weren't, it was very clear that they were literally making kind of clone phones of each other, which was fine. We knew this from the very first OnePlus One, guys. If you look back, that was a very mirrored version of an Oppo phone at the time. So that's always been the case. But with Vivo, I always felt like they're like own little planets inside BBK Group, right? So
yeah, I think, they exist as a competitor to keep Oppo aggressive.
Yeah, and also I think they're more of the innovative branch. Like they've always been more like the let's do some crazy R&D on something than Oppo. I feel like Oppo's been more like we want to make more mainstream products, and Vivo wants to be like we're doing the weird stuff.
But what's interesting is I feel like Oppo is doing a lot of the R&D.
Well, they are, but I feel like it doesn't seem to come out quite as clearly as with the Vivo phones.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. I mean, look. Here's the thing, right? If you look at the landscape of camera phones for 2022, last year, I mean, the Oppo Find X5 Pro was the only phone with proper in-body stabilization, proper, sensor mounted on little motors moving around, that like Apple does. We've seen Vivo do that too, but with a rotational gimbal type setup. Like there is no other phone in Android land that has in-body stabilization done like the Oppo Find X5 Pro. That is a custom one-off solution, and that is insane to me. Like the cost of that for one phone, they've never reused that sensor on anything else. The sensor itself is a standard like Sony of some kind, but I'm just saying like they could have reused that, but no. Now, maybe the Find X6 Pro will inherit that mechanism with a newer Sony sensor, but it's crazy to me because that the R&D on that, like with Apple, it makes sense because they're making so many phones, and it's the third generation now of their in-body stabilization, right? Sensor shift or whatever. So I find that interesting. But you're right, that's definitely, to me, an R&D tour de force,
Definitely.
Same with the ceramics, like their work on ceramic back covers that have these complex shapes. That is something you actually find on OnePlus phones. Like the camera bump on the OnePlus 11 is ceramic partially. And part of the way they do that is the know-how they have in manipulating ceramic materials, which is very much an Oppo thing, right? And Xiaomi did it for a while too with the Mi Mix back in the day, right? But yeah, I think it's fascinating. I'm excited to see a potential SoC from Oppo, simply to see what they do with it. And if they can integrate the Silicon imaging NPU stuff in there to kind of have a better, I hate that word, synergy. But, in terms of efficiencies, right? Like in terms of like power management stuff. So I was looking for stuff to talk about on the podcast, and I found this Hisense A9 phone that was launched in China, which is an e-ink smartphone. And I was like, I have never seen that. And supposedly this is like the second or third generation of Hisense e-ink smartphone. What's your take on this thing? It looks fascinating.
I think they picked up the flag that Yoda was carrying.
I was just going to say the Yoda flag, but Yoda always had a normal display as well, right?
Sure. But before Yoda, nobody even tried to do e-ink on a smartphone.
It's true. And they're the first. I have a Yoda phone too still somewhere.
And they were like, hey, we'll give you both. You choose what you want to use, how you want to use it. Yeah. So this is more of like a e-ink. You don't care about color. You don't care that much about frame rate. But here you go, and have the most absurd battery life of any phone ever.
For sure. And then the specs aren't too shabby either. Snapdragon 662, that's a 4G chip. We've got a pretty decent resolution on that 6.1 inch display, 1648 by 824. That's better than 720p. For that size display, that makes sense. I mean, it's not a monster in terms of specs, you know. 4 gigs of 6 gigs of RAM, 8 gigs apparently. There's also an version that's probably better. But what I really want to do is try one of that to see what the user experience is like. Like, I'm not obviously realizing this is not going to be the phone I use for watching videos and playing games and for me even photography per se. But it's interesting to see how does Android run on this with like vanilla apps like Gmail and even Facebook and Twitter, stuff that's more text, or all the messaging apps,
I think it'll actually be a very good test of how Android works for colorblind accessibility. Because that's effectively what this is. And I think that will be a really good test of those capabilities.
Yeah, I think this is fascinating. And so that's about $260. You can buy one on AliExpress, folks. There's actually a link in the story that I'm going to put in the show notes. The story is with Lily Puting, and check out if you want to buy. I'm almost tempted to just try to buy one because I have the Yoda 2, and that was cool. The Yoda 3 I never got. I actually handled one at MWC, but I never got a review in it.
I never got any review units, but I did play with a few of them, and it was always a very interesting device.
Indeed. Look at that. It kind of looks cool too. I don't know. There's something about e-ink that I like. Yeah. So, hey, there's a final topic. Actually, I want to add one in there because there's an Apple Watch news or rumor floating around that Apple is very close to releasing CGM, right? Basically continuous glucose monitoring, which is used by diabetic folks to check their blood sugar level. We know a lot of folks who are diabetic who use CGM, and it's changed their lives. So the holy grail has always been, since I worked at Pebble back in the day, when we were actually interfacing Pebble with some of the CGM machines by hacking them, with our community, because the manufacturers, of course, of health equipment didn't like us doing that. They've come around since then, right? They're now exposing their data and letting people own their data. I think that Pebble, in a way, was instrumental to that happening with the CGM manufacturers, because they realized, yes, they're the patients, but they should own their data. And clearly this is important and it's saving lives. So let's assist with that somehow. No. So that changed everything in the last decade. But the strong rumors of CGM that is non-invasive, like doesn't require a sticker type sensor on your body through the Apple Watch. That's got me really fascinated. What's your take on that?
I actually think it's really valuable. I think it'll be huge for people who both are diabetic and pre-diabetic. And I also think it'll expose them to a bigger market than they already have. And, there's a lot of science and technology being poured into using CGM to determine which foods are better for you to consume based on your body and how it reacts to food. So, even if you're not diabetic, CGM can be beneficial to you to reduce, what your sugar spikes are like, and how to counteract them, and what kind of things you should and shouldn't be eating, or how you should and shouldn't be exercising. So I think it's really interesting, and I think if Apple can make this happen, hopefully it percolates throughout the industry and improves people's quality of life.
I think so. This is going to be cool. Like, I hope it comes true, because we've been waiting for a CGM watch-based, non-invasive solution for a long time. It will make a huge difference to millions, possibly billions of people. And to be real, I hope that Apple is super cool about not really patenting this and letting it become available to the other watchmakers, like Garmin particularly, who's, probably one of the more popular, and Samsung. But I think that, Pixel is a small player here. And of course, I'm wearing my Pixel watch. It's funny how I always kind of diminish the Pixel watch in my head in terms of its kind of impact. But the reality is it hasn't left my wrist
Same.
since I reviewed it in October. And I'm one of those people who doesn't like charging their watch every day, and I am charging it every day. So like they did something right. It's not big enough, but man, it is. It is.
Do you know how many people have seen me wearing this and are like, what is that? Is that the Pixel Watch? Because it looks so much better than everything else. And that alone gets people's attention. And I agree with you. It is too small. Both of us, it looks tiny on our wrists.
I mean, it's kind of silly, right?
Right.
My giant wrist.
And the battery life is not the greatest, right? But
yeah,
there's something about it. And, the performance could be better too. But I think, first gen, let's give them
again, it's got to be 2022. We're going to look back at that year as like Pixel devices ruled. Like they just nailed it on every level except the SoC. Yep. Oh, well, we can't get it all right. The other Apple rumor that's getting stronger, and there's so many Apple rumors, and I don't like to cover them, especially when they're like 6 months away. Like all the iPhone 15 rumors, USB-C. We've talked about that. It's happening. We know that. But what I'm really, really excited about, this is getting really close to becoming real, is a 15-inch MacBook Air M2 or M3, whatever it might be in there chip-wise. The form factor. Like, it's not for me, but like I know that the moment Theo sees that, there will be a buy now button within 5 seconds of them. Because that's what they want so bad. They don't want a MacBook Pro. It's too heavy. It's too big.
Yep.
But they want more screen real estate because this is their main computer. They run their entire business on this. I'm on an iMac most of the time. And then when I'm in Vancouver, I'm on my MacBook with an external display. So, but they like to be all different parts of the house, their office, the bed, the couch, the kitchen, and they want a bigger screen. And this is going to be it. I cannot wait. Do you think this is coming?
A thin and light, I think it should if it isn't. But a thin and light, high-performance notebook with good battery life that can dissipate heat well.
Yeah, that's killer.
It's a big deal. Yeah. I think it'll sell really, really well.
Yeah, and I think Apple will be really surprised, I think. I mean, they've always kind of approached the bigger means pro, and this is proof that you don't need that. And I think the PC market in general has spoken about that. There's a lot of more affordable, larger screen laptops out there that are very popular.
The Grams are...
Oh, Grams, the LG, yeah.
Big screen, super light. It's satisfying a market.
For sure. So, look, folks, this is super cool. If it's happening, and if you're a Mac user and you're looking for upgrading your Macs to the M chip, and you've been waiting for a super light, larger screen laptop, this is it. This is your ticket. And yeah, if they keep the price reasonable, this is going to be their best seller of 2023, in my opinion.
I agree.
So exciting, super exciting. Folks, stay tuned. We'll be back soon at MWC. We'll have a nice show with a lot of folks covering all the details. It'll be fun. It'll be chaos as always, which I know you love it. You get a quiet podcast this week and you get a crazy podcast next week, right? Anshel, do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, I'm pretty much Anshel Sag everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, you name it. I'm the same guy everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. So Anshel writes for Forbes part of the time. Of course, works for More Insight and Strategy. He's an analyst, so he's got a lot of great thoughts about things. So I, follow him just for that. But also check out the articles on Forbes and stuff. And some of the More Strategy are available to the public, correct?
Yep.
And folks, you know where to find me. I'm at Tankerl, that's TNKGRL, both on Twitter and Instagram. Think about the comic book character Tankerl. Drop all the vowels, TNKGRL. If you want to chat with me and Anshel about this podcast, do it on Twitter. I think it's probably a good solution for now. And Instagram is where you'll find pretty pictures of phones, cars, travel, and food from me. Taken with phones. I was at a Mercedes thing yesterday, for example, where they showed the interior and infotainment system of the new E-Class Mercedes. And, I'll be writing a story for Moto One about that, so stay tuned for that. But I'm just bringing it up because, pictures of cars. And I posted pictures of the doors of the E-Class, because that's the only thing. I mean, we were allowed to show the interior, and I've got pictures of the interior, but like dashboard interior, but we weren't allowed to take pictures of the car. So they cocooned this car in this like a little, tessellated, yeah.
Cocoon.
It was dorky, but it was funny because I was like, I've got a scoop. You want to see the doors? The doors. I have the doors. So there was a lot of laughing with the other journalists when I took those photos. But you'll find that on Twitter and Instagram. So that's my point. 2 YouTube channels you should subscribe to that are related to the podcast, that have some visual content for the podcast, like unboxing my Oppo Find N2 Flip, for example. That's youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast and youtube.com/mobiletechmore. You know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the little bell, comment, all that stuff. You want to comment about the podcast as well on the other non-necessarily related to the podcast videos, do that, because I'd love to hear your thoughts, and it's a good vehicle for us to chat. The podcast itself lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, everywhere good podcasts can be found. So, subscribe and tell the world about the podcast. Always happy to have more followers, so that's good. And if you want something a little special and you want to support me financially, there's a Patreon. Patreon.com/TankGirl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. So the big one, and you see me brandish the Oppo earlier, the flip phone, is we have a video version. That's why I keep showing things on camera. For those of you subscribing, you get it earlier through Patreon, one of the tiers we have, and you get it slightly less edited. I leave some of the bloopers in there for fun. Yeah, so consider joining the Patreon for that. There's also a tier to join our Discord server and chat a little bit more in depth. And there's a bunch of other perks there, so check it out. Patreon.com/TNKGRL. If you don't like Patreon, that's cool. I get it. It's kind of like a recurring thing. If you want to just donate some money to help me out, I like my coffee. So help me out with a $5 donation through PayPal. There's a link in the show notes. Just click through the little PayPal button there. You can click on it. Yeah, think of helping me out. I appreciate it. And I want to thank Mint Mobile, our sponsor. They're pretty awesome. So as you know, I'm constantly reviewing multiple phones, and while that's fun, it also means I'm constantly spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. That's where Mint Mobile comes in, and that's who I'm partnering with for today's podcast. If you also want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. As tech-savvy early adopters, you've probably heard of Mint Mobile before, but let me quickly tell you how awesome their service is. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around and waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current device and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM free of charge. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, lightning fast 5G, and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link mintmobile.com/mobiletech to get premium wireless starting for $15 a month. That's mintmobile.com/mobiletech. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And I also want to thank you, Anshel, for being my guest again. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks again for having me. I always love coming on and chatting with you about stuff.
It's always a delight, and hopefully I'll see you at MWC, maybe not on the show, but maybe. And folks, we'll have another podcast next week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.